First question is, how does sex impact our health?
Woo! Well, okay. We'll do some good research on how it increases longevity.
Here we are. Welcome to the show.
What's up, G?
The only Kaytee Boyd. Mate,
Good morning.
It's been a very long time. A very long time.
It's been ages.
Yeah. Actually, haven't seen you in person for a long time. I've seen you on TV. I've seen you doing adverts. We've talked on the phone, but here we are.
Lucky me.
Lucky me, mate. What back at you?
I love the beard. It's looking good.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be all serious. I've just turned 40. I don't know if you know that, but things have changed.
No way.
3 kids at 40. I've cracked it.
Yes. When was your birthday?
December.
Oh, me.
A Capricorn.
Are you now? Well, I just turned 43.
You've got a couple of years on me.
In February. I'm a Aquarium. Freedom, you know. Like.
Yeah. One of my sons is an Aquarius.
Oh yes.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. He's only 1.5, so the full Aquarius will come out in him at some point. But
watch out, you're in
mate, he's pretty robust. Actually, funny story, mate. This is just an interesting side note. But you know, when we trained together years ago, there was a moment in about 2 years into training you that it dawned on me that we both grew up in the same place, and that's weird. Because if anyone knows where Waiuku is, yeah, which is like
ding 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 ding.
Yeah, I'm gonna say
got a pretty mouth.
New Zealand, right? It's it's a little farming community out in Glenbrook, just past Glenbrook. You should not know people, and the fact that you were the head girl of the school. So there we go. 2 years, like 20 years later, we reconnected. These two little people from Waiuku, and here we are again. So,
yeah,
like-minded people,
living our purpose.
Absolutely,
it's pretty cool. Yeah.
So, buddy, tell us what you have been up to.
Wow, the last. It's okay. Right, there's quite a lot, so I feel a little bit like almost embarrassed when I started writing it down, just to kind of put it into a context. We started it's called a longevity fasting diet. So I've teamed up with a cafe called Sip Kitchen, and we do fasting mimicking protocols. So I got involved with it to start with a guy called Dr. Voltalongo, who does something called Prolon. And it's a 5-day program that tricks you into thinking that you're starving. You get all these amazing gene expression changes. It helps to mop up any pre or cancerous cells. So I was like, hell yes. And when it became available in New Zealand, I started using it for some of my people, my community. And then they couldn't bring it in anymore because it had honey. And we have such strict rules on honey that I'm like, okay, well, I need this because the benefits of it are just so incredible. So I approached Sip Kitchen and they said yes, and we're into our 3.5 years, and it's been amazing. So we've got that going on, and we're just doing some seminars for that. I've teamed up with Talk Peach, which is an amazing, it's a charity. It's an amazing charity that a woman called Tasha started because she had a gynecological cancer, and there's 5 of them. So she wants me to do a webinar series because I specialise. One of the many things is cancer. So I'm doing that. We're just doing some stuff with the NS Foundation. We've got wellness retreats going on. So we used to do retreats in Niue and overseas. Now we're we're not stuck in New Zealand. We have this amazing opportunity in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Woo! So we're just getting that sorted out. We've got a food forest garden happening up in Northland. We want to help to create, because there's a huge big retirement village going across the valley, and we want to have enough vegetables to feed the elderly, because you know what happens with their B12 zinc mineral. We want their brain function to be good as they get older. Those are my two dangerous guard dogs in the background.
That's all good.
Prostate cancer. So I'm working with an oncologist who's we're
You're
putting
on
a
everything,
program
mate.
together.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's full on with the Dutch test. So the Dutch test is something I've been using for, I think I brought it into New Zealand about eight years ago, and have been using it. It's one of the best hormone tests that I know of. So that's just a few things, Gareth. I won't bore you with it.
That's pretty cool, mate. So neurodegenerative disease, prostate
Totally.
cancer.
Yes.
What
Erectile
one?
dysfunction. Can we talk about
dysfunction.
erectile?
Yeah,
Man.
We're going to get into this today. We're going to get deep into this. These are good convos, man. I love these convos.
Oh, same.
Because
Because it all links, right? It all links.
Absolutely, it all links. And yeah, we'll talk about that as well, the intuitive part of health. Hey, let's talk about your injuries. So you've this is a recovery podcast. So let's I mean, I know you've broken a lot of bones in ex-Commonwealth Games, BMX, Olympic Games.
Road and track for Com Games, but BMX professional till 16. But yeah, whatever, broke lots of bones, had some pretty serious issues.
Oh yeah, and
injuries.
You think I'm trying to figure this out about you? You're like very athletic. I've obviously trained you. I've seen you move. You're a very athletic individual. Is it that you don't focus? Is it that you push the boundaries to the max? Like, you just go hard? It's going next
Love
level.
it.
Yeah,
yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so
and break.
And so recently you had a concussion.
Yes.
A very serious one. Now, a concussion's a big thing.
Yes.
The
huge.
NFL is starting to blow up with how we take care of their brains.
Correct.
Yep. So how do you take care of your brain after having such a serious concussion? Well, first of all, tell us how you had the concussion.
Oh, just surfing. I just got hit in the side of the head with someone coming along the wave after it was just a surfboard to the temporal lobe.
A surfboard.
Yeah, it's funny. I say just now because I feel like I'm pretty much all good apart from the Tourette's. I'm just joking. But it's good now. But it was vomiting, couldn't get out of bed, couldn't think, really overwhelmed, super anxious, teary, couldn't focus, couldn't be on the computer for more than a minute. And what I did is I actually did a protocol for one of my Ironman athletes years ago who had the most horrific crash. So I just looked at all the research I did on TBIs, traumatic brain injury, and I just followed that protocol. So I have a doctor friend of mine who prescribed me melatonin. Recommended doses about between 1 to 5 milligrams. I took 240 milligrams a day. This, by the way, this is just for it's not what you should be doing at home.
Yeah, this is for serious brain injuries. This is under clinical supervision. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, beautiful. And I took progesterone because the research showed that in my studies, TBI females did better than males, and they were looking at the effects of estrogen and progesterone on support. So I did that. I did lipospheric glutathione, which is, as we know, it's one of the best antioxidants for the brain. I went on keto, so I did a high-fat diet. I took tons and tons of beta-hydroxybutyrate. Am I talking too fast?
No, but let's take a pause. Let's unpack a couple.
Yeah, lots. I did lots of stuff.
Let's just unpack it just for people if they're not familiar with some of that stuff. So melatonin, obviously, that's to improve your sleep when your brain's swollen.
Oh my God. Okay, so it's not just for sleep. It's not just for that. The research is showing with melatonin, yes, it's an anti-inflammatory, but like I use it, we have what they call a redo protocol for cancer patients. And the link between sleep, melatonin, and your awake time is quite highly predictive of tumor growth. So when you use high-dose melatonin continuously for someone who's metastatic cancer, this is just an example, there's a degree of people where their tumor growth is slower. So I think the research on melatonin is so far reaching, and it should be something that people would look at considering more.
Post concussion or for cancer recovery?
Post concussion, anyone with cognitive decline. I actually think even with erectile dysfunction, mitochondrial dysfunction, metabolic abnormalities, inflammation in general.
And And so what were you doing? Were you trying to make yourself sleep more? Were you doing 10 hours a day? Like, what were you trying to do to heal?
So, well, if you think about the symptoms of a concussion, what are the things that are most important to kind of quash? It's brain inflammation.
Yep.
So if you can quash brain inflammation, then you're going to get a whole reduction in the whole brain cell death cycle.
Yep.
So that was one of the main things that I wanted to do, was to decrease brain inflammation, because therefore everything else just kind of flows on from that.
And so the estrogen, so estrogen is going to increase IGF-1, so that's going to give you more growth factors. So
No, so how it works is estrogen and progesterone are, not only are they mood enhancers, but they help you recover faster.
Yep.
So estrogen is something that for women, when women go through menopause, you end up with that middle-age spread, and that's when you reduce that's when estrogen's dropped. So estrogen actually helps you to become insulin sensitive. So it has quite dual functions of its action.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I, even though my estrogen was good, I do a Dutch test every year. I really don't want to be stuck in bed vomiting and not being able to function. So it's the balance of like, okay, short-term use for me anyway was I want to drop inflammation. I want to make sure my insulin is good. So hence the higher fat, low carbohydrate diet. So everything around that is there's a purpose involved in it. So that's why I wanted to use estrogen, a little bit of estrogen, but mainly progesterone.
Yep.
Progesterone's calming, helps you with reducing your anxiety, helps you with sleep.
Yep.
So here's another really kind of clinical pearl, is that with women from 35 to 55 usually is your perimenopausal time. So progesterone is only produced after you ovulate, right?
Yep.
So you get this amazing increase in feeling good, sleep better, and as we get older, that just slowly walks out the door. So some women who are more susceptible to it end up with more anxiety, can't cope with stress, that kind of thing. So I'm 43, I was 42 at the time, so I'm in that category. So yeah.
Man, that's super interesting, man. Look, I'd love to dive into that.
I know,
a lot.
I love it. Oh my god, it's so cool.
We'll stay on track with it, because otherwise we're going to go down that rabbit hole. But
cool.
I think we need to unpack another. Oh, you've just identified another session I want to do now. That's cool. That's very cool. But look, today what I really wanted to talk to you about is kind of three key things. The main thing I want to talk to you today is, she's a bit tongue in cheek, but it's a real thing, and I know that you've been a fan of, I wouldn't say prescribing sex, but definitely
I would. I totally would be. Yeah, man. Let's go for prescribing.
Okay. So
totally.
I want to talk about sex and its effect on our health and sleep. I want to have a brief conversation about cancer, and then I want to kind of wrap this up with like disease in general. Okay, so just some high level stuff about disease. So, first question is, how does sex impact our health?
Woo! Wow. Okay. Well, there's some good research on how it increases longevity, and it can make you live longer. I think there was a 2019 study on older adults that found that, especially after males had a heart attack, their risk decreased by 1/3 if they had regular sex, which was between 1 to 2 times a week.
Why is that? What's going on?
Well, first of all, there's exercise. So, usually, there's hopefully it's not just like a minute of high intensity, but it could.
I'm going to get into this prescription shortly. We're going to drill down on this. Man. Is it 5 times a week? Is it 2 times a week? Is it 30 minutes at a time?
Imagine it. Actually, it's a good idea. That could be your next sex prescription. Look, come home with a prescription for it. Exactly. Well, I think part of the increasing longevity is like for men in particular, what happens after you have sex? What do you produce? You're producing oxytocin. You're producing relaxing neurotransmitters and hormones that make you feel you're in your rest digest system. You get out of your fight flight. So breathing decreases, heart rate reduces, muscles start to relax, your mind starts to relax. So how can that not be a bad thing? Reduce cardiovascular risk, like the fact that you're in fight flight. One thing that makes it hard to have sex in the first place. So after a man orgasms, people talk about oh, he always falls asleep after and I want to cuddle and talk.
It's true. It's true.
It's like, you can't, sorry ladies, it's a thing. It is totally a thing, and you cannot, like, you just pat him on the head and, oh, well done, darling. Just kidding. You have to let that go, but that's a really important thing for men. There was another interesting study, I think it was like 2017, about how there was an increase in job satisfaction. So the study was done on married couples who fooled around at home, and those good vibes actually spilled over to work the next day. And I think those happy feel-good hormones can last for 48 hours. So that can contribute to like pair bonding, those lovely feelings towards your mate, but also then that spills over because if you're exuding, happy, someone's had sex today. Woo, yeah. Would you like a coffee? Yes, please.
I bought the whole floor.
Woo, yeah.
So do you reckon it says the physiological benefits 100%, but then as you just identified, 48 hours later, you're still experiencing some of those benefits from a connection perspective. So is it kind of threefold?
Oxytocin.
Yeah, oxytocin, man. So, and that you're going to take that state of mind into your social, the social aspects of your life. You're going to take it into your personal relationships.
Definitely.
Yes. So a healthy sex life is the number one prescription for Kaytee Boyd.
Yes, but we get into a little bit of the tricky part for like men. For men, nothing really changes. Like testosterone and growth hormone will slowly drop as you get older, but that doesn't mean that for men their desire to have sex is mitigated. For women when they go through perimenopause, so from 35 to 55 plus or minus, and then into menopause, estrogen, a lack of estrogen means they literally dry up downstairs. So they become quite dry. There's no juiciness. There's no like jousting for sex. Their libido naturally drops. So for women, sometimes, and this is kind of probably a conversation that can trigger a little bit of resistance, because I know I work twice a week in an integrated clinic, and the doctor I work with uses bioidentical hormones for women with the main purpose of maintaining good brain function. So estrogen as we get older for women helps keep cognition, so memory, and also good physical body, good juicy skin. And I've watched over the last 10 years of working there how different these women look to some of the clients that I start to see who I had never been on bioidentical hormones for, helping boost immune function, bone health, especially for women. Like estrogen, the lack of estrogen is what leads as one of the key founders for osteoporosis as we get older. So I cannot believe the difference between these 50 to 60-year-old and 70-year-old women, and he's actually got a few 80-year-olds in there as well, who are bouncing into the clinic. Hi, Kaytee, how you doing? Nice to see you. My God, they look amazing. Good energy, good memory, good self-esteem. And I think that's another thing that sex helps with. So there's good research on that having either casual, oral, vaginal, or any other kind of sex that you'd like. Agnes, boost self-esteem. and boost self-esteem versus people that don't end up having regular sex. So not only is it the afterglow of sex, it's that good regular sex makes you feel that it boosts your self-esteem, and also, yes, we know that it helps with reducing stress. One thing that I think is really interesting is that it could help you ward off a cold or flu. So they did this research, I can't remember what university it was, but it was about levels of the immunoglobulin A. So it's an antibody that helps fight off infection of common colds, and they tested it in the saliva. And what they found was that the highest, the IgA levels were the highest in the couples who consistently had sex a few times a week. Yep. But it was low in the people who had no sex or who had lots of sex. So, 6+ times a week. So
it had a tipping point. So
yes, there was a bell curve. Yeah. Yes, totally.
This podcast is brought to you by No Ugly Sleep, New Zealand's first scientifically developed sleep tonic. This product is literally armed to the teeth with the highest quality sleep precursors that were formulated to improve your body's natural sleep performance without the sedation, so you can sail off to dreamland and enjoy a great night's sleep. For our listeners, if you shoot across to our Sleep Loop shop and enter the code NOUGLY, you'll get a sweet as 10% discount off a full month supply of No Ugly Sleep.
Damn straight.
So it's very different for men and women, man. So that's really interesting. So I'm in a relationship.
So different.
I'm in a relationship with my wife's 35, so that's all right. But if say I was in a relationship with a 45-year-old, what can we do in this relationship to make things better? So how could is there nutritional things, or does it have to be hormone?
Right, great question. Well, some women don't have any problems until they get into their 50s. Yeah. So if you both have high libido, no problems. If you have one that has low libido, the first thing I'd go for would be stress, because as women go through perimenopause, the first thing that gets like the carpet whipped out from underneath them is progesterone. And that is your like feel good. Estrogen can go sky high one cycle and then bottom out the next. So it's a bit of it's like the ocean.
Yep.
The tide's in, the tide's out, it's a tidal wave, and then like, whereas, So stress is a major, and I think that that's probably the most important thing for women. And women always, not always, that's a generalization, but what I see in clinic is that women are trying to do everything. They have children, they've got a house to maintain, they've got to keep their husband happy, and they're working. Like, fuck, it's so hard. And, you know, having to be all of those things, the last thing that they feel like is sex, because they're in that fight flight the whole time, and their brain is going like 100 million miles an hour, finances, family, husband. Yeah. And look, I actually just wound down one of my other businesses last year, and it was a bit of a stressful thing going through COVID and that. And me and V, my wife, we sat down and said, look, next year's about us. And one of the things and sometimes when you're in it, you can't see, you know, the hedges from the roses. And the thing that has changed this year is I made time for her to do, you know, she's going to the gym at 1 o'clock now. She's like, stuff it, I'm just going to be about me. And she's doing that 3 or 4 times a week. With, you know, getting like muscle fuel, like just making life simple. But and immediately, you know, energy levels are back up. We measure the stuff using data as well, so we kind of know, we can see when she's tracking well, when she's tracking poorly. That's so interesting what you said about the menstrual cycle, and how there's that kind of lull. And you see that a lot in exercise too, right? If you're training a lot of females, you'll see like they'll peak, mate. If you're onto it, you're going to get them to peak at their heavy lifts just prior to cycle or post just after the cycle, and then absolutely.
Then you got to go back to volume. You can't intensify a woman in between.
Correct.
It just doesn't work, eh? So
correct. Well, and it's funny because I think there's also a bell curve with that whole picture. So, like, there's some women that I used to train. So when I was studying, I did S&C at Les Mills down in Dunedin, and there was a group of women. There's probably about 5 or 6 who, like, you could heavy load them the whole time, and they were but stoic. And I wonder if it was, now looking back, they didn't really have, or they stuffed their emotions down and would just kind of push through it. Yeah. So I think they may have been more, you know, the drivers.
Yeah, I used to see that with a lot of the female trainers, right? They get gobbled up by that environment, and then they're just getting kind of pushed into a modus operandi. And in 10, 15 years down the track, they're bigger than they've ever been, and they're just cooked, absolutely cooked. Yes. And they're so confused. They're like, hang on, I've dieted, I've done the high intensity cardio, I've done the fat burn cardio, I've done the keto, I've done the paleo, they've done it all, but nothing's working. So the body's fully unresponsive, right?
Totally.
Which is not good.
No, it's not good. And if we go back to that question you asked me about, so let's go when you're going from your princess years to your queen years, remembering that estrogen and serotonin are like best mates. So when you boost serotonin, or when you boost estrogen, you want to do that together. So I'd be thinking about adaptogens for women as they go from their 30s, and make sure you get your hormones tested while you're young, because then you'll have a benchmark to work from as you get older, so you can see when things start to drop.
Yep.
That is so important, because then you can start using adaptogenic herbs. We use like Progesterone is a brilliant one I love to use. Women also lose testosterone.
Yep.
So testosterone's
back up just so adaptogens are from herbs, Chinese herbs or herbal medicine. But there's like, I know there's real cool stuff in chamomile that gets broken down. But what was that one specifically for women?
Well, there's a few of them, but I think the one thing that comes up a lot for women is Vitex. So Vitex and black cohosh for estrogen, wild yam. Actually, wild yam is used as a substrate for the manufacturing of bioidentical estrogen.
Oh, wow.
So those are, it was just like,
there was an old wives' tale that if you ate too many yams, you would, if you're male, you just might develop.
You get pregnant.
Yeah. Oh man!
I never heard that one.
That I thought was rubbish, but it's actually got some truth to it.
Correct. Yeah.
Crazy.
And it's interesting because I think it's such a personal preference, but I see a lot of hormone-related mood disorders in women. So PMS, extreme depression at certain parts of the cycle. Histamine can make a huge impact on how a woman's migraines and whole cycle is, how much they bleed. So excessive bleeding from an inability to clear histamine from a Dow gene, HMT. Anyway, but adaptogens, I'm going off track, but adaptogens are amazing. My favorites would be like rhodiola, that has some great research on it. Ashwagandha I love, because ashwagandha actually can boost DHEA. So DHEA is one of your kind of, it's called the mother hormone, because DHEA will then go on to make testosterone, your androgens and estrogen.
Yep.
So it's so important, and DHEA is made in the adrenals. So if we're under significant amounts of stress, what you'll see in a Dutch test is that just gets to be zeroed. It just bottoms out after a long period of stress. So it's really important.
So just to recap that, so obviously stress let's go back. Stress is the most important thing, and look, there's external things and internal things you can do with stress. It's different for everyone. It's a perceptive thing, but whatever you can do, and what I heard there and what me and my wife did is, like, society's changed. We're on the clock all the time, right? It's so busy.
Correct.
So if you can create some presence and some mindfulness, some space, that's going to be impactful. But if you can do it together in the relationship, even better. From a nutritional perspective, we've got a whole host of things. You've got like yams. You've got what was the other two?
So that's different. You'd need to do it in a supplement form. So there's a therapeutic dosage.
Yep.
But for women, one of the key things as you're going through that change of hormones is keeping your blood glucose regulated, and men as well. So blood glucose dysregulation or glycemic control is so fucking important.
Yep.
Because that just completely blows everything out. And what you used to be able to consume in your 20s and 30s, you might find in your 40s and 50s just doesn't work anymore. It's so annoying.
It's because those transporters are just not there. The hormones that would normally pull it into your cells is
and we become less stress resilient. So with that lack of progesterone, and also for women in particular, when you need testosterone as a woman, it's what gives you your resilience as well as your other hormones. And that's something I think women could look into, and that gets stunted by inflammation, excess adipose tissue. This is for men too, like that middle age spread. Alcohol just annihilates men's testosterone levels, unfortunately. So
we see that in the sleep with the sleep devices.
Oh, crazy! Yeah,
two doses of alcohol, so just 2 standard drinks, and someone's deep sleep is just gone for the entire night. You can't get it back.
Totally,
It's
gone.
There's another conversation about melatonin that I want to talk to you about sleep as well, but that's
melatonin.
I want to get onto this next thing, and it, man, you take on a lot of responsibility. You kind of said it at the start of the show about cancer. cancer care, pastoral care. You're looking after a lot of people. I've sent people your way. They're still here today. So there's the testament to the Boyd Clinic. How do you approach that? How do you approach cancer from your own professional perspective? How do you manage it emotionally? Because obviously people are going through some pretty heavy stuff across the entire family. And then what's your system to kind of get people back?
Do you know what, Gareth? I think I've only just managed to figure that out, because it can become so overwhelming and all-consuming. I'm really lucky that my partner, he's also a crusader, so he's, how would you explain us as a personality type, Gareth?
We ideate. We're ideation people. So we come up with lots of solutions, lots of ideas, but we're very high level.
Yes.
We don't knuckle down on detail. So my learnings as a human being is to my self-awareness is to understand that other people need more detail, other people just need action, which we can kind of fire into, and some people need more nurturing, right?
So it's just, correct. Beautifully explained. I think in the last 10 years I've become a lot more detailed, because when you're dealing with cancer, it's so overwhelmingly ginormous. It's such a huge topic. And so what I do is I have to exercise. That's one of the most important things for me to be able to cope. I have my COMT gene, so we haven't even talked about genetics yet. But years ago, I did a lot of research and qualified as just someone who can look at gene profiles. And mine was interesting because you always have to do it yourself, right? Because then you learn a lot more. And my COMT, which is, we'll just call it COMT, it's important for how you clear dopamine and epinephrine and norepinephrine, so your stress hormones.
Yeah, you're also your prefrontal cortex, your thinking hormones.
Yes, they are. Thank you. And so what it means for people like usually you and me is when that COMT gene doesn't work very well, we can maintain good dopamine levels for a long period of time, which means we can focus. We have tons of energy, lots of alertness. We usually get complimented on our glowing skin and good spirits. But when we become overwhelmed, so for me, if I have too many profiles to do, or my phone doesn't stop ringing all the time, or there's something else that's going on that just kind of tips the balance, or I drink too much coffee, irritability, insomnia, anxiety, impatience. COMT also clears estrogen, so there's also that increased estrogen buildup in my body, and I get PMS. So I know that's really important for me. So if I'm probably going on a tangent, but okay, summary. I write in a diary.
Journal, yep.
At the end of the day. So, okay, 3 most important things I need to do professionally, 3 most important things personally. And if there's anything on my mind, I write it down and it goes onto the side of the bedside. And then I will look at it in the morning. So take a look. Yep, cool, that reminds me of what I need to do today. And then I take the dogs for a walk, or I go for a run, or I do some exercise. So I'm not on my phone.
Yep.
No phones in the morning.
Tech detox. Very, very smart.
Very seriously, I have to. Otherwise, I just crash and burn after a while. It's massive emotional load.
If you're quite task focused like us, or you need to be, we can come up with a lot of ideas, but as soon as someone sort of shunts us into a zone, it kind of stresses us, right? We don't like to be to one space.
No.
So if you're that kind of individual,
don't box me in,
mate. Don't box us in, mate. Otherwise, you're going to get come out swinging. The list thing is really important for me as well. But one thing I kind of picked up on with clients, coaching people, is that action of taking out of your brain and into the real world is super important. One of the most effective things you can do to just move it from here, so it's not causing you all that
from the brain.
All that trouble. Spinning the wheels and get it down on a piece of paper, man. It can. And then one thing you just made me realize is you've got to reflect. You've got to go back and reflect on it.
I think that's probably the most important part, because that first waking part, your brain's more in theta as you wake up. So more absorbable.
So when you're in that creative state, you can reconcile things a lot easier.
Right? Just like a good accountant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially if you're dealing with heavy emotional stuff, eh? I mean,
Yeah.
if you can
Yeah.
disarm some of the
Yes.
intensity, man, you can get back
Yes.
to, you know,
Yes.
sanity.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think I have a post-it note on my bathroom mirror, and it's been a really good reminder for me. So on it, there's challenge, novelty, social connection, and creative expression. So for everybody,
Say that again. Say that again. That's really
so
cool.
challenge. So challenge.
Something that challenges
So
you?
having enough of a challenge in life, whatever the challenge, whether it's like you're building a garden or you're like, for me, I've got a bit too much going on probably, but it's not over 20% of what I think I can handle. So I feel alive. I feel like I'm in forward movement. Novelty. It's number 2. So for me, that would be usually I'd be wanting to go to a new surf beach that I haven't been to, or it's like people who love to travel are always a novelty. Oh, new food, new environment. Oh, yeah, stimulating. Woo! The third is social connection. So having enough human-to-human contact that you can express yourself, or you feel loved, you feel connected, which comes back to good sex. Actually, we could actually look at all these 4 in relation to sex. So challenge, what kind of sexual position can we do today? Novelty, something new, have a nice little outfit, or like get some new shoes if your partner likes your legs or whatever. Social connection, obviously, like all the benefits of that. And the last one that I probably feel like I do quite well is creative expression. So I'm really, I like to create anything. So it'd be like wearing bright clothing. I like to dye my hair pink. I love dancing. So I'm going to make sure that I have enough of creative expression in my life that it creates joy and forward movement. So if there's a time when any of those 4 things aren't in balance, that's when shit starts to fall apart. And I can go back to that and go, actually, I'm not challenged enough. I'm bored. That's what it is. And you can see this with clients. Novelty. What new things are you doing for yourself? Okay, so let's attack that part. Or social connection. Okay, talk to me about the people in your life that mean something to you. Yeah.
That's really interesting. That's a very awesome formula, my friend. Interesting you said boredom. You brought up boredom, and I see this.
So you get it with sex life too, right?
With your sex life, with your job, I see it
Totally.
so often, man, that people are kind of like just defeated in what they're doing. I'm like, do you realize that how you're showing up for this?
Yes.
And you just shine a little mirror to it, and people they light up. They're like, oh my God, I need to do something about this.
Yes. Oh, Gareth, that's the one.
Boredom on the emotional spiral sits really close to depression.
Yes.
So you kind of don't realize that boredom's that close. Yes. So when you're bored, you're not that far away from being depressed.
100%.
So just to think about wrapping this up today, I've got two big questions to finish off. The first one is, what do you think we need to do as a society to help reduce some of the diseases that we have that are so prevalent in our communities, like cancer, like heart disease, like obesity, like mental health? From a health pro's perspective, what do you reckon we need to do?
Right. Well, this is extremely my personal opinion, but I think we're in a society now where if our next door neighbour gets a flash car, we feel that we have to get one. Or, being okay with what you have and being grateful for what you have would change a significant amount of our community.
So not trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Correct.
Yeah. So
and I see that and I think that comes down to how you grew up. So no one, unless not many people that I know of, they might be familiar with part of their conditioning as a child. But for example, I'm dyslexic. And for me growing up, I was lucky to pass tests and exams. And, my dad said, I remember him saying a few things to me that made me feel like, oh my God, I'm so dumb. So therefore, my opinion of myself was such that I needed to do more, because if I do more and I achieve more, then he'll love me. And I didn't really realize that link until I was older. and figuring out, like, am I doing this for someone else or am I doing this for myself? So getting coaching around what your purpose, your true purpose is versus what you think you should be doing would be where, you know, keeping up with the Joneses is because you're comparing yourself to someone else and always thinking that you're not good enough when actually you're fucking perfect. Well, not you're perfectly imperfect, as Brene Brown would say.
Yep.
I think that's probably quite important, but also acknowledging that we all have our inner drive, which makes us who we are, and we need to celebrate that. So I think that's something really important.
I love that. So what I love about that is it is the personal responsibility piece. There's a personal responsibility piece around self-respect. That's what I take from that. So if you can respect yourself,
that makes my armpits sweaty thinking about it. It's so true.
Look, as a neurolinguistics coach as well, one of the things we do try to work on is that kind of helping people to understand that you are more than enough.
Beautiful.
It's so easy though to get caught up in what you just talked about. It's so easy.
Correct. I do too. I have to keep coming back to actually, like, is this what I really want? Is this what's really important for me, or, you know, my loved ones around me? And if it is, then, like, yes, man, full speed ahead, 12th gear. Wow! If it's not, okay, let's just cut it loose and be okay about what you're already doing, which is plenty. And I can't remember what you said about the second question.
It's coming. It's a big one. We're going to finish with something big. Hey, just out of interest, what was your big breakthrough moment in your life, just from a self-development perspective?
I think that was probably it, that I'm not stupid.
Yeah, beautiful.
That I'm actually, I'm not dumb. Yep. That I'm okay the way I am. And I had addictions growing up because it was just a way of, you know, feeding that black hole of self-doubt and uncertainty and lack of self-love.
Self-acceptance.
Totally. Yeah.
From self-respect. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And that's, I think, something you just have to learn as you go. I did at uni, I did a lot of stuff. I did a Reiki course. I went to weekly meditation sessions. I started looking at, I did quite a lot of psilocybin in my early 20s. And I think it sounds bizarre, but that was life-changing for me.
Yep. Oh man, there's so much cool research now on that particular. Yes. That's another podcast. Let's save that one. That's a whole podcast.
Yes. Well, they're looking at that for cancer and, you know, reducing anxiety. But I think that would be probably it. What about you? What's yours been?
Mine came not so long ago, about 5 years ago. I finally figured out how to reconcile failure. Yeah. So I was
awesome.
Similar kind of experience growing up in Waiuku. You don't think, it's a little country bumpkin kid. You don't know that you can measure up to everyone. I was a small kid, so I always felt like I had to kind of fight. And then I joined the army, and that was a double-edged sword. So it was a double-edged sword for me because I became super physically resilient and mentally resilient for physical pain. And then I found this way to achieve. And then it was the making of me as an 18-year-old. Went to East the peacekeeping thing, but then it was resourceful till it wasn't anymore. And when it wasn't anymore was when I became a father. Because now I couldn't just be a high achiever anymore. I couldn't just keep trying to win. I couldn't be as competitive as I used to be. I had to figure out this other way of living. And so I finally figured out that how to deal with failing. Because I was never very good at it. I hated losing. No one teaches you how to fail.
Right.
Yeah. And it kind of came from a business experience as well. And then what I finally kind of resolved in my head was that after failing a couple of big times, I was like, actually, nothing happens after failure. It's not the end of the world. The sun comes up tomorrow and you pick yourself up and go again. And I was like, okay, this is not as bad as I perceived it to be. Because in my mind, failing was this big thing. And I was so scared of it. And so what was interesting about that is in the physical world, when you're doing physical sports and competitive stuff, that can be very, very motivational. In fact, it's one of the,
Totally.
if you listen to David Goggins, he is a massive advocate of not hoping for anything and just relying on yourself for everything. And there's no end to this. You just keep fighting to the end. And it's a very masculine space.
Yes.
I tell you what, it does not serve you when you come into the real world. It's you've got to be more holistic. And so
correct.
Learning to fail, man. Learning to fail.
Yes.
My big breakthrough.
Yes.
So much self-confidence that I could fail at anything and I would be all right and I could go again. Are you ready for the last question?
Oh, bring it on.
Yeah, it is, man. She's a big one. All right. These are your Kaytee Boyd's top 3 tips to live a healthy, abundant life.
Top 3 tips. Well, I reckon the first tip would be, for me, it's the post-it note on my mirror, which is a constant reminder of how to live in flow. Because if shit's turning a bit south or there's some things that you can't control, coming back to that I think is really important for me. So maybe it's a reminder of who you are and where you're going and where you want to go. Number 2 would definitely be being grateful for what you have, because that automatically creates a safe space for everything. Being grateful means that it will take you out of a negative, jealous, possibly like angry situation to fully changing every part of your consciousness. I think that would be my number 2, because if you're grateful for everything that you have, grateful for your conversations, great. Oh, Gareth, I'm so grateful for you as a person. You know, it automatically starts to change your physiology, change your brain chemistry. You can't go wrong. My 3rd one would be becoming more in tune with your body, mentally, emotionally, physically, brain, just becoming more aware, becoming a more aware being. So being conscious about what's coming up for you would be my 3rd tip. Oh, well, is that a conditioned response I have, or is it a valid emotional response to something? Which that's a fucking skill. That takes time to learn. Yeah, so those would be my top 3. How's that for you, Gaz?
No, I think you just quoted Gandhi, Warren Buffett, and some other guru all in one little sentence, mate. So well done. I like it.
Oh, thanks, G.
It's a great tip.
Cool. What are yours, out of interest?
My top 3 would be something around self-respect. I really do believe in that. I think if you can get to a place where you can look yourself in the mirror and you're proud of what you see coming back at you, and it's not what you see, it's what you have done that will make you proud. So it's the deeds that you do, because your self-image is not your body image. That's the big one.
Beautiful.
The next one is exercise. Try to challenge your body to be the best version of itself that it can ever be. Exercise has just given me so much in my life, and it continues to give me so much. I feel like yourself. I feel shit when I haven't exercised properly. I'm not the same human being.
No, neither.
And then the big one for me that's been a big game changer is family. Just connect with your family, spend time with your family, go and because the kids are little for us at the moment, it's just the funnest time. You know, everything is exciting. They want to games. Just every day is a game. The laughter in our house is just really cool. So spend time with your family, reconnect with your parents, reconnect with your brothers and sisters, because you get one shot at that, only one shot. So make the most
that's
of it.
So true. Oh, that's beautiful. Can I steal some of that? I think the families are good.
All right, we're signing off.